Hulk Hogan funeral leaked videos. Friends and family say goodbye. This is the heartbreaking moment Hulk Hogan's casket was carried toward his final farewell. The funeral took place yesterday, a somber day for the wrestling world, as legends, family, and friends gathered to honor the life of an icon. The pallbearers moved in silence, the weight they carried far heavier than what the eye could see. It was the weight of legacy, of loss, of goodbye. Inside that casket lay the body of Terry Bollea, known to millions across the globe as Hulk Hogan. But unlike many traditional burials, Hogan won't be laid to rest in the ground. Instead, his body will be removed from the casket for cremation, as his loved ones gather one last time to say goodbye in a deeply personal farewell ceremony. In rare leaked footage from the service, the camera pans across the solemn scene, revealing a sea of familiar faces from the wrestling world, each one touched in some way by the life of the Hulkster. At the front, we catch a glimpse of Chuck Zito, a longtime friend of Hogan, his expression unreadable but heavy with grief. Just behind him stands Triple H, somber and silent. Jerry the King Lawler is also there, seated quietly, his signature crown nowhere in sight. Just raw emotion. To the right, we spot Shane McMahon, flanked by Edge's real name Adam Copeland, both sitting in reflective silence. A little further back sits Diamond Dallas Page, his head bowed in deep respect. It wasn't just a funeral. It was a final reunion, a gathering of those who knew the man behind the legend. Later, the celebration of Hogan's life continued at his very own beachside bar. In one clip, we see former WWE star Matt Riddle in attendance, casually dressed but clearly moved. Just behind him stands Nick Hogan, Hulk's son, doing his best to stay composed as he honors his father's memory in front of close friends and fans alike. The official program for the service offered a touching glimpse into Hulk Hogan's incredible journey, photos from every era of his life, from the early days of wrestling to the global superstardom that followed. The words, "In loving memory, Terry Bollea," were printed boldly on the front, beneath a picture of Hogan flashing his iconic mustache-filled smile. More private moments from the ceremony were quietly shared online, some by those who attended. One especially emotional photo showed Hogan's closed casket, draped with floral arrangements in his signature red and yellow colors, the colors of Hulkamania. Above the casket, a large screen displayed a rotating slideshow of photos from throughout his career, showing the Hulkster in his glory days, his family, and moments never before seen by the public. In the audience sat wrestling greats from every generation. At the very front, we could see the Big Show, arms folded, eyes locked on the casket, a silent giant saying goodbye. Standing near the casket was Jacques Rougeau, visibly emotional. He leaned forward, hand over his heart, whispering a final goodbye to the friend he once shared the ring with. Jacques was later seen with his wife, both holding up the funeral program in quiet reverence. The camera captured their bittersweet smiles as they stood beside the casket surrounded by red and yellow flowers, a visual reminder that while Hulk Hogan may be gone, Hulkamania will live forever. Another moment from inside the ceremony came from Matt Riddle and his wife. They posted a now-viral photo from within the service, captioned simply, "A beautiful service for a beautiful man. We love you forever, Hulk Hogan." On August 5, 2025, the world didn't just lose a wrestler, it lost a symbol of strength, resilience, and charisma. Hulk Hogan wasn't perfect, but he was unforgettable. From his rise in the 80s to his battles in the ring and in life, Terry Bollea's story was one of transformation, triumph, and now timeless remembrance. What we witnessed yesterday wasn't just a funeral. It was a celebration of a life that touched millions. A goodbye not just from the wrestling world, but from the world at large. Red and yellow may fade from the lights, but they'll never fade from the hearts of those who believed in the power of Hulkamania. Rest in power, Hulk Hogan. This is the heartbreaking moment the world feared would one day arrive, but no one was truly ready for. A moment that transcended wrestling, sports, or even entertainment. A moment that signaled the end of an era. On August 5, 2025, the wrestling world stood still as Hulk Hogan, The man who defined a generation, the icon who inspired millions, was laid to rest in a private, emotionally charged farewell. And now, leaked footage from the funeral has surfaced, pulling back the curtain on one of the most intimate goodbyes wrestling has ever known. There was no roar of a crowd, no championship belts raised high, no pyro, no entrance music. Only silence. A silence that hung heavy in the air as pallbearers carried the casket of Terry Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan, toward his final resting place. The casket itself was simple, dignified. But the weight it carried was anything but. It wasn't just the remains of a man. It was the weight of a legacy that spanned decades, the weight of memory shared in arenas across the world, the weight of a character who became larger than life, yet was still just a man when the lights faded. As the camera panned slowly across the chapel, one could feel the grief, not just see it. Familiar faces lined the pews, many struggling to maintain their composure. These weren't just colleagues or fellow wrestlers. They were brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters of the squared circle, a family forged through the trials of the ring and the triumphs of showbiz. And today, they gathered not to perform, not to compete, but to mourn. Chuck Zito stood near the front, a longtime friend of Hogan's from outside the wrestling world. His jaw set firm, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. He didn't need to say a word, his silence spoke volumes. Just behind him, Triple H stood in stoic reverence. The Game, the cerebral assassin, now just a man bidding farewell to a legend who paved the way. His hands clasped in front of him, his head bowed slightly. No suit of armor. Just grief. Jerry the King Lawler sat a few rows back. Known for his booming voice, his infectious energy at the commentary table, and that signature crown. But on this day, the crown was gone. In its place, a somber stillness, as the King of Memphis Wrestling watched a chapter of his own life close alongside Hogan's. Shane McMahon, the son of the man who built an empire with Hogan at its center, was there too. Next to him, Edge, real name Adam Copeland, sat with his hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the front of the room. The once rated R superstar, now a man reflecting on the loss of someone who'd been more than a peer. He, like many others there, knew that this wasn't just about the passing of a wrestler, it was the goodbye of a generation. Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, was spotted with his head down, motionless. A man who had seen Hogan not just as a competitor, but as a brother. For so many in that room, the grief was deeply personal. This wasn't just a memorial for a performer, it was a funeral for a friend. Leaked video from the chapel showed more than just tears, it showed unity. It showed reverence. It showed that no matter how many times they had battled in the ring, these men and women understood what Hogan meant to them and to the world. It was a reunion born of tragedy, yes, but also of respect. It was the kind of moment you couldn't script, even in the world of professional wrestling, but perhaps the most emotional detail of all came not from the service itself, but from what was planned afterward. Hulk Hogan, in accordance with his wishes and those of his family, would not be buried. Instead, his body would be removed from the casket and prepared for cremation. His ashes, sources say, would be scattered in a location known only to his closest family members, a place of peace, far away from the ring, the crowds, the spotlight, and yet, before that deeply private act took place, there would be one final farewell. A smaller, more personal ceremony, attended only by family and his closest circle. In leaked clips shared by a handful of attendees, we catch glimpses of this final goodbye, a candlelit room, a soft hum of music playing in the background, and a circle of people holding hands, heads bowed. At the center, Hulk Hogan's casket, surrounded by red and yellow roses, the colors of Hulkamania. This was no ordinary celebrity funeral. This was a moment suspended in time. One video clip, taken discreetly, showed the slideshow that played throughout the service. It was projected on a massive screen just above the casket. It wasn't just a highlight reel. It was a journey from his early days in Florida wrestling to the mega fame of WrestleMania to his battles off-screen, both legal and personal. But through it all, one thing remained constant: the spirit of Hulkamania. The belief that no matter how hard life hit, you could always rise, say your prayers, and take your vitamins, and somehow you'd survive. The official program, held up in one video by Jacques Rougeau and his wife, was a work of art. On the front, Hogan's smiling face beamed beneath the bold text, "In loving memory, Terry Bollea." Inside were tributes, not from writers or PR teams, but from those who knew the man, not the character. His children spoke of a father who was imperfect but tried. His friends spoke of a man who made mistakes, but never stopped trying to be better. His fans, millions of them, spoke through flowers, messages, and social media posts that poured in from every corner of the globe. One of the most powerful images came from a still frame of The Big Show, real name Paul White, sitting alone in the front row, arms crossed over his massive chest. Tears welled in his eyes, but none fell. His gaze was locked on the casket, unmoving. This was a man who had shared the ring with Hogan, had battled him, laughed with him, and today mourned him. Jacques Rougeau was later seen walking slowly around the chapel, his hand occasionally brushing the casket as if afraid to let go. He whispered something we'll never know, a personal goodbye, a final message. His wife joined him shortly after, and together they stood still, the moment captured in one emotional photograph. They weren't just saying goodbye to Hogan. They were saying goodbye to an era. The ceremony then transitioned into something different, something that only Hulk Hogan could have inspired. A celebration. Hogan's beachside bar, a place where he had hosted countless fans and friends over the years, became the unlikely site of this second act of mourning. But it wasn't rowdy. It wasn't loud. It was intimate. Former WWE superstar Matt Riddle was seen quietly sipping from a drink, standing alone near the entrance. His wife was nearby, and together, they posted a photo that soon went viral. The caption read simply, "A beautiful service for a beautiful man. We love you forever, Hulk Hogan." And there, in the background of the image, you could see Nick Hogan, Hogan's only son, standing at the edge of the bar, flanked by two close friends. He was dressed in all black, his face calm but his eyes red. He hadn't spoken publicly yet, but his presence said everything. He stood not as a celebrity, not as a public figure, but as a son. A son saying goodbye to his father, a father who happened to belong to the world. More photos emerged from the bar event. Friends hugging, sharing stories, laughing through tears. One moment showed a framed photo of Hogan at his peak, shirt ripped open, mustache thick, energy wild. Beneath it, a simple quote printed in bold letters, "What you gonna do when the world misses you?" It was cheesy. It was nostalgic. And it was perfect. There was no elaborate speech. No celebrity tribute on stage. No WWE cameras rolling for content. This was raw. Real. The kind of event you didn't film for TV, but held close to the heart. Those who were there will never forget it, not just because of who Hogan was, but because of how deeply he was loved. Back inside the chapel, the atmosphere was still thick with grief. As the service reached its most emotional moments, the pastor, a longtime friend of the Bollea family, stepped to the podium. His voice, calm but filled with emotion, echoed through the quiet room. Terry wasn't just Hulk Hogan, he said. He was a father, a friend, a man who gave the world his strength when he sometimes had none left to give. For those listening, those words cut deep. This wasn't a eulogy for a wrestling character. This was a farewell to the man behind the muscles, behind the mustache, a man who had known pain, love, loss, redemption, and, ultimately, peace. One of the most unexpected moments of the day came when Brooke Hogan, Hulk's daughter, stood to speak. She hadn't made many public appearances in recent years, having stepped away from the spotlight to lead a more private life. But here, in front of a crowd that had loved her father for decades, she found her voice. "My dad was a hero to many," she began, her voice trembling. "But to me, he was just Dad. And I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world." Her words ignited a ripple of tears across the audience. Her tribute, simple and unpolished, was filled with the kind of raw truth that only a daughter could share. She spoke of bedtime stories, of Sunday breakfasts, of the quiet moments far from the crowd. He wasn't perfect, she said. But he was mine. And I'll miss him for the rest of my life. After her speech, the audience sat in a stunned silence. There were no cheers, no claps. Just an overwhelming sense of shared sorrow. The kind that comes from losing someone who, in one way or another, had touched all their lives. From fans to family, everyone in that chapel knew they were witnessing something sacred. Not just a funeral. A transformation. The final chapter of an American myth. More footage began to leak online as the day went on. Not from paparazzi or press, but from those who genuinely wanted to preserve the memory of a moment. One clip showed Mick Foley in a black suit instead of flannel, standing near the entrance, gently greeting guests as they arrived. His usually jovial energy was subdued, his voice soft as he spoke with fans and family. "He was the reason I believed this business could be something bigger," Foley said in a hushed exchange. He made it larger than life. Nearby, a camera captured a quiet moment between Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. No words were exchanged, just a simple embrace. Two men from different eras, united in grief. One fan would later post the clip with the caption, "They weren't characters today. They were human." That's what this day had become, a stark reminder that behind every superstar, there is a soul. And Terry Bollea's soul had left a mark that no heel turn, no scandal, no injury could erase. As more footage from the beachside gathering surfaced, the tone shifted. Not to celebration, exactly, but to reflection. The setting sun painted the sky in deep oranges and reds, fittingly, the colors of Hogan's legendary gear. A symbolic farewell, nature's way of closing a curtain on a larger-than-life presence. A bonfire had been lit on the beach, and around it gathered a mix of old legends and young superstars. Among them were Kevin Nash and Scott Hall's son, Cody Hall, sitting side by side in silence. Nash, who had shared some of Hogan's most iconic moments in WCW, looked out over the waves, visibly emotional. He whispered something to Cody, who nodded solemnly. It was a passing of the torch, a quiet acknowledgement that the men who built wrestling's golden eras were slowly leaving this world, and it was up to the next generation to carry that spirit forward. Nick Hogan was seen again, this time speaking softly to a small group near the bar. One of them, identified later as Hulk's old friend Brutus, the barber Beefcake, pulled him into a deep hug. Another clip showed Nick lighting a small tiki torch near the water's edge, placing a red and yellow lei around its base. As the waves lapped at the shore, you could hear someone softly playing Real American on an acoustic guitar, a haunting, stripped-down version of the anthem that had once echoed through arenas worldwide. The emotion didn't end there. Back in Tampa, fans gathered in droves outside the gates of Hogan's former home. Many had brought flowers, posters, even replica championship belts. One man, dressed head to toe in vintage Hulkamania gear, held a sign that read, "Thanks for fighting for us, Hulk." Another woman, clearly emotional, left a childhood photo of herself at a WWE event where she'd met Hogan. On the back, she had written, "You called me your little warrior." I never forgot that. WWE, in a rare move, stayed largely silent during the private service, choosing instead to release a single statement on social media. He changed everything. "Thank you, Terry Bollea. We'll carry it from here." But their silence was deliberate, a sign of respect for the family's wishes. No cameras. No public spectacle. Just dignity, and still, that didn't stop the impact from spreading. Across the internet, tributes poured in from fans, from former superstars, even from rival promotions. AEW's Tony Khan posted a message of respect. "We may have worked on different sides of the business, but Hulk Hogan was a pioneer. The world feels emptier today." Wrestlers from NJPW, Impact, and indie promotions worldwide echoed the sentiment, proving that Hogan's legacy didn't belong to any one company. It belonged to wrestling. It belonged to culture. Perhaps the most chilling moment came from a leaked video showing the very end of the private ceremony. As Hogan's body was quietly transported for cremation, the crowd gathered outside his beachside bar broke into a quiet, unprompted chant. "Thank you, Hogan. Thank you, Hogan." It started with just a few voices, and then grew. And grew. Until dozens, maybe hundreds, were chanting together, not in unison, but in heartfelt chaos. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't organized. It was pure point one clip, shaky and grainy, captured a final image that will likely be etched in the hearts of wrestling fans forever, Hogan's casket being slowly wheeled away as the sun disappeared below the horizon. In the background, someone whispered through tears, "There goes our hero, even in death." Hulk Hogan's presence refused to fade. The stories continued. The memories resurfaced. The videos trended. And in homes around the world, people who had never met him found themselves crying over a man who made them believe in something bigger. Something louder. Something more colorful than the real world often allowed. In the days that followed, new footage continued to emerge. One particularly moving video showed a small child, no older than 7. Standing in his living room, flexing in front of the television screen. He wore a red bandana, a plastic championship belt, and a hand-drawn mustache. The TV in front of him was replaying one of Hogan's old WrestleMania promos. As the child flexed and mimicked every line, the caption read, "He's never seen Hogan live. But somehow he still believes." And maybe that's the legacy Terry Bollea leaves behind. Not just the headlines, not just the controversies, not just the matches, but belief. In strength. In goodness. In standing tall even when the odds seem insurmountable. Because if Hulk Hogan could do it, maybe, just maybe, so could we. What the world witnessed on August 5th wasn't just a funeral. It wasn't just a final bow. It was a declaration. That some legacies are too bright to be dimmed. That some heroes never really leave us. They just become part of the stories we pass down, and as the final photos from the service fade into memory, one thing remains certain: Hulk Hogan may be gone, but Hulkamania will never die. In the days that followed the funeral, the shockwaves of Hulk Hogan's death continued to ripple through the global wrestling community, not only in the arenas where his name once echoed, but in hearts, homes, and timelines across the world. A wave of tributes began to swell beyond the private moments captured at the funeral, turning into something much larger, a global mourning unlike anything seen before in professional wrestling. The farewell had begun quietly. But now it was roaring across the internet, across locker rooms, and across generations of fans who felt like they had lost a piece of their childhood. Social media transformed into a living scrapbook of Hulk Hogan's greatest moments. Clips from WrestleMania 3, where he body-slammed Andre the Giant, resurfaced and were shared by millions with captions like, "The moment the earth shook," and "The slam heard round the world." One video, originally posted by a young fan, went viral within hours. It featured a side-by-side of Hogan's most iconic in-ring moments and footage from his funeral. The video, set to a slowed-down piano version of Real American, brought thousands to tears. It was more than nostalgia. It was a tribute to a man who had symbolized an era, an unspoken promise that good could still triumph over evil, if only for a few glorious moments in the ring. Major news outlets began running retrospectives on Hogan's life. ESPN aired a 90-minute special titled Terry Bollea, The Man Behind the Mania, which drew in record-breaking views. ABC News ran a full primetime feature on the life, death, and legacy of Hulk Hogan, something usually reserved for politicians or pop icons, not wrestlers. But Hulk Hogan had broken every mold long ago. He had turned a once fringe form of entertainment into global pop culture. And now, in death, he was being honored not just as a wrestling icon, but as an American icon. Even rival sports figures and entertainers weighed in. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson posted a deeply personal tribute. "Without Hulk Hogan, there is no Rock," he wrote on X. "He was my childhood hero, my inspiration, and eventually, my brother in this crazy business. I'm heartbroken. Rest in power, Hulkster." The post garnered tens of millions of impressions and was reposted by athletes, actors, and even political leaders. President Joe Biden's official X account shared condolences with the Bollea family, calling Hogan a symbol of perseverance, American grit, and an entertainment pioneer who changed the world of sports forever. Back in Tampa, where Hogan had lived for years, the city began planning a public memorial. Mayor Jane Castor announced that Hogan would receive a posthumous key to the city and that a special Hulk Hogan Day would be held annually on August 5th to honor his legacy. Plans were already underway to rename a stretch of beachfront road near his bar Hulk Hogan Way. Locals gathered daily at the beach, turning it into a makeshift shrine filled with posters, candles, and flowers. Some fans even drove cross-country to visit the site, laying down their childhood wrestling memorabilia as tribute. Inside WWE, the emotional toll was evident. Monday Night Raw opened that week with a 10-bell salute. The arena lights dimmed. A massive graphic reading in memory of Terry Bollea. 1953 to 2025-inch filled the screen. Superstars stood on stage, many with tears in their eyes. Seth Rollins, known for his stoic presence, was visibly shaken. Roman Reigns kept his head bowed throughout the entire tribute. It was rare to see that kind of vulnerability on live television, but this was different. This was bigger than a storyline. This was goodbye. Backstage, a WWE staffer leaked a private locker room meeting where Triple H reportedly addressed the roster. His voice cracked as he spoke about Hogan. "We all stood on the shoulders of giants," he told the locker room. But Hogan? He was the shoulders. The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. It was said that even the newer recruits who had never met Hogan were crying. Because it didn't matter when you entered the business. If you stepped into the world of wrestling, you were walking through a door Hogan had kicked open decades ago. At NXT, Shawn Michaels hosted a tribute night featuring stories, promos, and personal reflections from younger talent. One of the most poignant speeches came from Braun Breaker, the grandson of Rick Steiner, who had met Hogan when he was just a kid. "He told me, 'The business will chew you up, kid. But if you stay real, if you stay loud, and you stay loyal to the people, you'll survive.' That stuck with me. And I hope I make him proud." Meanwhile, over in AEW, even Tony Schiavone, a longtime voice from WCW's Monday Nitro, delivered an emotional monologue during Dynamite. "I've called a lot of matches in my life," he said. "But nothing compared to the energy in the room when Hogan walked down that ramp. He didn't just wrestle, he moved the earth beneath him." The crowd erupted into a spontaneous chant, "Hogan! Hogan! Hogan!" It didn't matter the company. Didn't matter the generation. Hulk Hogan had unified the wrestling world in death, just as he once did in life. More footage from the funeral began to circulate, not leaks this time, but officially shared by family and friends with the blessing of Hogan's estate. One of the most emotional clips showed a series of never-before-seen home videos projected during the private farewell service. There was Hogan in his kitchen, making pancakes for his kids. Hogan in the pool, letting his daughter climb on his back as he swam her around like a human float. Hogan in the hospital, visiting a young cancer patient who wore a red bandana and struggled to smile, until Hulk flashed that familiar grin and growled, "What you gonna do, brother?" The boy laughed. And in that moment, the man who made millions cheer gave one child something far more powerful, joy. Those videos were cut together into a tribute montage that quickly made its way online. Within hours, the video had tens of millions of views and was trending across multiple platforms. WWE later confirmed it would be aired as part of an official Peacock documentary titled Beyond the Mustache: The Life and Legacy of Hulk Hogan. The documentary would explore the full spectrum of Terry Bollea's life, the fame, the scandals, the triumphs, and ultimately, the farewell. Yet for many fans, one of the most profound moments didn't come from a video or a tribute show. It came from a single quote, printed in the funeral program, written by Hogan himself before he passed. It read, "If I leave you with anything, let it be this: believe in the fight. Life will pin you down, count you out. But if you say your prayers, take your vitamins, and never stop believing in yourself, brother, you'll get back up." That quote, now immortalized, has since been printed on t-shirts, posters, and tribute walls. WWE plans to etch it into a bronze plaque that will sit outside its performance center in Orlando, a lasting reminder to every aspiring superstar that greatness is possible. That even legends were once dreamers. At the beachside bar, now transformed into a living monument, a fan-organized candlelight vigil was held 1 week after the funeral. Hundreds gathered as the sun dipped.